The twin suns of 7 were setting behind the purple mountains when Park first saw the creature. She had been walking along the security fence, checking the sensors like she did every evening, when movement in the tall violet grass caught her eye. At first she thought it was a trick of the light. The grass on this planet moved strangely, swaying even when there was no wind. But then she saw the scales. They caught the dying sunlight and threw it back in colors she had no names for. Purple became silver. Silver became blue. Blue became something else entirely. The creature stepped out of the grass slowly. It moved on 6 legs, each one thin and careful. Its body was covered in overlapping scales like the pangolins she had seen in pictures back on Earth, but its face was different. It had a long snout like a fox, and 4 eyes that glowed with soft golden light. Those 4 eyes watched her with an intelligence that made her heart beat faster. Had been stationed at Outpost 7 for 6 months. She was a lieutenant in the Terran Expeditionary Corps, responsible for perimeter security and sensor maintenance. She had read all the briefings about this planet. They had over 300 species of animals, but this one was not in any report she had seen. The creature was starving. That much was obvious. Its ribs pressed against its scaled hide so clearly that could count them. Its legs trembled with the effort of standing. Its scales, which should have been bright and shimmering, looked dull and cracked. Every protocol she had learned told her to back away slowly. Do not interact with unknown alien life forms. Do not feed wildlife. Do not establish patterns that could attract dangerous creatures to the base. These rules existed for good reasons. Humans had made terrible mistakes on other worlds by treating alien animals like the pets they remembered from home. But could not stop looking at those ribs. She could not stop seeing the way the creature's legs shook. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her ration bar. It was her dinner. The chocolate-flavored protein bar that she looked forward to every evening, because it was the only food at the outpost that tasted like something other than cardboard. "This is stupid," she whispered to herself. "This is really, really stupid." She crouched down slowly, keeping her movements small and gentle. The creature watched her but did not run. Its 4 eyes tracked her hand as she placed the ration bar on the ground at the edge of the security perimeter. Then stepped back. She took 5 steps away from the fence and stood very still. For a long moment, nothing happened. The creature stared at the ration bar. It stared at. Its nostrils flared as it caught the scent of something it had never smelled before. Then with painful slowness it crept forward. Each step was careful and ready for flight. Its eyes never left its face, watching for any sign of danger. When it reached the ration bar, it sniffed it once, twice, 3 times. And then it ate. Watched the creature devour her dinner in 4 quick bites. When it was done, it licked the ground where the bar had been, searching for any crumb it might have missed. Then it looked up at her again with those 4 golden eyes. "That's all I have," said softly. "I'm sorry." The creature turned and disappeared into the violet grass, stood there for a long time, watching the place where it had vanished. The suns finished setting. The stars came out. The 3 moons of 7 rose one by one over the mountains. Finally walked back to the base. She did not tell anyone what she had done. Commander was strict about protocols. He would not understand. None of them would understand. But could not forget those ribs. She could not forget those trembling legs. The next evening she walked the same path along the fence. She carried 2 ration bars in her pocket. One was her dinner. The other was her breakfast from the next morning. She would be hungry, but she had been hungry before. It was not so bad. The creature was waiting for her. It stood in the same spot just beyond the fence, watching her approach with its 4 golden eyes. But this time it was not alone. Behind it, half hidden in the purple grass, was a smaller version of itself, a cub. Its scales were softer and less defined, still developing. Its eyes were larger in proportion to its face, giving it a look of permanent surprise. It pressed against its mother's flank, trembling with fear. felt something break open inside her chest. It was a feeling she had not experienced since leaving Earth. It was warmth and sadness and determination all mixed together. She crouched down and placed both ration bars on the ground. "I see you brought family," she whispered. "That's okay, there's enough." The mother creature approached first. It ate one bar quickly, then nudged the other toward the cub. The little one crept forward, its 6 legs wobbling with uncertainty. It sniffed the food, looked at its mother, looked at, and then began to eat. Watched them until both bars were gone. The cub, its belly now round with food, made a small chirping sound. It was the first noise either of them had made. The mother responded with a lower, rumbling sound, and then both creatures disappeared into the grass. That night lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the rules she was breaking. She thought about the risks she was taking. She thought about all the things that could go wrong. But mostly, she thought about the cub's chirping sound. It had sounded almost like happiness. "2 ration bars," she said to the darkness. "I can spare 2 ration bars." She did not know that she had just changed the future of 2 species. She did not know that her small act of kindness would ripple outward across the galaxy in ways she could never imagine. She was just a lieutenant on a distant planet, feeding a hungry animal because she could not bear to watch it starve. But that is how the biggest changes begin, not with grand plans or careful strategies, just with one person, one moment, one choice to be kind when kindness was not required. The creature came back the next evening, and the evening after that, and was there every time with food in her hands and warmth in her heart. The herd was beginning to form. 3 weeks passed on 7. The twin suns rose and set. The 3 moons chased each other across the night sky, and every evening Park walked to the eastern fence with food in her pockets. Her secret had grown beyond what she could hide. 7 adult creatures now waited for her each night, their scales shimmering in colors that seemed to change with their moods. 11 cubs tumbled and played in the violet grass, chasing each other in circles while they waited for the human woman to arrive. The base crew had started calling them Shimmer Foxes. Nobody knew who had invented the name, but it stuck. The creatures did look like foxes in some ways, with their long snouts and clever eyes, and their scales shimmered constantly, even in darkness. Ration bars were no longer enough. She had started trading with other crew members, exchanging maintenance shifts for extra food. She had raided the kitchen storage for expired nutrient paste that was scheduled to be recycled. She had become, without meaning to, the official caretaker of a growing alien family. It was Specialist Lee who finally caught her. Was the base's agricultural technician. He managed the hydroponic gardens and the protein vats that kept the outpost fed. He was a quiet man who preferred plants to people, and he rarely left his greenhouses after dark. But on this particular night, he had been walking back from the water reclamation facility when he saw dragging a heavy crate toward the eastern fence. "What are you doing?" he asked, stepping out of the shadows. Froze. The crate was full of expired nutrient paste, enough to feed the Shimmer Foxes for a week. There was no way to explain it that would not get her in trouble. "I can explain," she said, even though she could not. Walked closer. He looked at the crate. Then he looked past the fence, where 18 pairs of golden eyes were watching them from the darkness. "You know those things could be apex predators, right?" he said. His voice was calm, almost curious. "They're not," found herself standing, ready to defend her creatures. "They're prey animals. Look at their eye placement. Their eyes are on the sides of their heads, not the front. That means they need to see in all directions to watch for danger. Look at the way they startle at sudden movements. Look at how they're always ready to run. Something on this planet hunts them. They're not the hunters." Was quiet for a moment. He studied the Shimmer Foxes with the careful attention he usually gave to his plants. The creatures studied him back, their scales rippling with nervous colors. "The little ones," he said finally, "they're thin." The adults give them food first, but there's never enough. Felt the familiar ache in her chest. I've been doing what I can, but there are so many of them now. Every few days, a new family shows up. It's like they're telling each other about this place. They probably are. Reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein stick. It was the concentrated kind, packed with calories, that agricultural workers ate during long shifts. May I? Nodded surprised. Walked to the fence slowly. He crouched down the way always did, making himself smaller and less threatening. He placed the protein stick on the ground and stepped back. The shimmer foxes watched him with uncertainty. They knew, they trusted, but this new human was a stranger. Then the first cub broke away from the group. It was the bold one, the same cub that had been with its mother on that second night. It had grown in the past 3 weeks, its scales now bright and healthy. It walked toward the fence with a confidence that none of the adults showed. The cub sniffed the protein stick. It looked at, then it ate the food and chirped happily. Huh, said, he was almost smiling. I guess I'm part of this now. From that night on, had a partner. Began growing extra crops in a corner of his greenhouse that he did not report to the base inventory system. He experimented with different plants to see what the shimmer foxes liked best. He discovered that they loved a purple vegetable that grew wild on the planet, and he started cultivating it in large quantities. The secret became harder to keep. Other crew members noticed and disappearing every evening. They noticed the missing ration bars and the unreported vegetables. They noticed the shimmer foxes gathering at the eastern fence in larger and larger numbers. But something strange happened. Instead of reporting them to Commander, the other crew members started helping. Corporal began saving her breakfast bars for the cubs. She said it was because she wanted to lose weight, but everyone knew she ate twice as much at dinner to make up for it. Sergeant started taking extra patrol shifts along the eastern fence and would have more time with the creatures. He claimed it was because he wanted the exercise. Dr. Han, the bases, began secretly documenting the shimmer foxes. She recorded their behavior, their social structure, their communication patterns. She told herself it was for science, but really it was because she had fallen in love with the cubs just like everyone else. By the end of the second month, the shimmer fox population around the base had grown to 43. 7 original adults had become 15. 11 cubs had become 28. They had built dens in the violet grass just outside the security perimeter. They raised their young within sight of human lights and human sounds. The creatures had stopped flinching when humans approached. The cubs had started playing games with the crew members, chasing fingers through the fence and chirping with delight. The adults had begun bringing gifts, interesting rocks, shed scales, strange flowers from the wilderness beyond. Nobody talked about it openly. It was the base's worst-kept secret, but everyone protected it because everyone understood something that was hard to put into words. The shimmer foxes had not just accepted the humans, they had adopted them. The creatures had decided, in whatever way alien animals made decisions, that these strange two-legged beings were part of their family now. And the humans, without really meaning to, had adopted them right back. Commander must have known. He was too observant not to notice what was happening, but he never said anything. Perhaps he had seen the way his crew smiled more often now. Perhaps he had noticed how morale had improved since the shimmer foxes arrived. Perhaps he had looked into 4 pairs of golden eyes and felt the same warmth that everyone else felt. Or perhaps he was just waiting to see what would happen next. He would not have to wait long. The galaxy was watching, even if no one knew it yet. And the shimmer foxes were about to show everyone exactly what it meant to be part of a human herd. 7 had violent weather. The twin suns heated the planet unevenly, creating massive pressure differences that turned into sandstorms capable of stripping paint from metal. When the sensors detected a major storm approaching, the entire outpost went into lockdown. Shutters closed, doors sealed. Everyone gathered in the central building and waited for it to pass. Everyone except Corporal had been running diagnostics on the water reclamation unit in the agricultural dome when the storm hit faster than expected. The wind went from gentle to deadly in less than 10 minutes. By the time she realized she should return to the main building, the visibility had dropped to zero. Sand and debris filled the air so thick that she could not see her hand in front of her face. She was trapped. The agricultural dome was designed to survive storms. Its walls were reinforced. Its seals were tight. Knew she was safe as long as she stayed inside. She settled against the wall near the hydroponic racks and prepared to wait. That was when she heard the sound. It was a wet, clicking noise, like bones being sorted in a bag, like teeth scraping against teeth. It came from somewhere in the dome, somewhere behind the tall racks of growing plants. Blood went cold. She had read the xenobiology reports. She knew what made that sound. There was the apex predator of 7. It was the reason the shimmer foxes were prey animals. It was the nightmare that had shaped their evolution, turning them into fast, alert, easily spooked creatures that ran from every shadow. Were ambush hunters. They were patient. They could wait for days in complete stillness, using bioluminescent lures on their heads to attract curious prey. They were the size of earth bears but covered in thick armor plates that could stop bullets from standard-issue sidearms. Their jaws were designed to shear through bone. And one had gotten into the agricultural dome. Drew her pistol. Her hands were shaking. She knew it would not be enough. The reports said that could take dozens of hits from weapons like hers before slowing down. She needed heavy weapons, backup time to call for help. She had none of those things. The clicking sound grew louder. There was moving through the hydroponic racks, knocking over plants, following her scent. Its bioluminescent lure glowed a sickly green through the leaves, pulsing like a diseased heart. Backed against the wall, she raised her pistol. She took aim at the gap between 2 racks where she knew the creature would appear. They emerged into the open. It was 3 meters tall. Its armored plates were from old battles. Its 4 eyes fixed on her with a hunger that had no mercy in it. Its jaws opened, revealing rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. Fired, the bullet hit the creature's chest and bounced off like a pebble thrown at a tank. The charged. And then the shimmer foxes came. They poured through every opening in the dome, through the vents that used for air circulation, through gaps in the wall panels that had loosened in the storm, through the maintenance hatch that someone had left unlatched. They came in numbers that could not count, their scales flashing in patterns she had never seen before. Not 7, not 15, not 43. More, so many more. The shimmer foxes did not attack they were too small. Their teeth could not pierce its armor. Their claws could not scratch its hide. They would have been killed in seconds if they had tried to fight. Instead, they herded it. Their scales flashed in coordinated bursts of light, strobing patterns that seemed to confuse the eyes. The creature stumbled, suddenly unable to track its prey. Groups of shimmer foxes darted in from the sides, their scales creating walls of shifting color that pushed the predator in the direction they wanted. The cubs were the bravest. They ran directly under its legs, forcing it to adjust its stance or risk falling. They were small enough to avoid its jaws, fast enough to escape its claws, and they moved together with a precision that seemed impossible for animals without language. The adults created corridors of light and sound. Their scales flashed left and the moved right. Their scales flashed right and the moved left. Step by step, meter by meter, they pushed the massive predator away from. She watched in amazement as the shimmer foxes worked together like a single organism. They were not just panicking and hopping for the best. They had a strategy. They had roles. Some were distractors, some were herders, some watched for opportunities while others took action. The roared in frustration. It snapped its jaws at the nearest shimmer fox and missed by centimeters. It swiped its massive claws and hit only empty air. It was the most dangerous predator on the planet, and it was being defeated by creatures it normally ate for breakfast. Within 5 minutes, the Shimmer Foxes had pushed it to the breach in the dome wall where it had entered. With a final coordinated flash of scales, they drove it back into the storm. The creature roared once more and then disappeared into the swirling sand. Slid down the wall. Her legs would not hold her. Her hands were still shaking, but now it was from relief rather than fear. The Shimmer Foxes gathered around her. The first one to approach was the bold cub, the one that had been coming to the fence since the beginning. It was fully grown now, its scales bright and strong. It pressed its cool snout against trembling hand. Then the others came. They surrounded her in a protective circle, their scales glowing with soft, warm colors. The cubs climbed onto her lap. The adults pressed against her sides. They made soft chirping sounds, sounds that had never heard before, sounds that seemed almost like words of comfort. When Commander finally reached the dome with a security team, they found sitting in the center of a Shimmerfox pile. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all pressed together around the human woman they had saved. He looked at the Shimmer Foxes. He looked at the massive claw marks on the floor where they had stood. "Report," he said finally. "The Shimmer Foxes saved my life, sir." His voice was steady now. "They came when I needed them. They drove off with nothing but light and coordination. They protected me like I was one of their own." Was quiet for a long moment. Then he knelt down beside, and the Shimmer Foxes did not run from him. They watched him with their golden eyes, and when he reached out his hand, the bold cub pressed its snout against his palm. "I think we owe Lieutenant Park an apology," said quietly. "She was right all along." Nobody on the base ever questioned the Shimmerfox feeding program again, and the creatures never forgot what the humans had done for them. A debt had been created with ration bars and kindness, and that debt had been repaid with courage and protection. But the story was only beginning. The Shimmer Foxes had just shown what they could do for one human in one dome. Soon, they would show what they could do for all of humanity across the stars. The story of Corporal and the Shimmer Foxes spread faster than any official report could have managed. Soldiers told other soldiers. Scientists told other scientists. Ship crews carried the tale from system to system, growing and changing with each telling, but always keeping the same core truth. A human had fed hungry animals. The animals had saved her life. Within 3 months, Outpost 7 had become famous. Researchers arrived from across human space, requesting permission to study the Shimmer Foxes. Journalists came seeking interviews with Park, who found herself answering the same questions over and over again. Bureaucrats came with forms and policies, trying to understand how to categorize what had happened. Dr. Han, the who had been secretly studying the creatures for months, finally published her findings. Her report changed everything humans thought they knew about alien animals and human-alien relationships. She presented her conclusions to a packed mess hall. Every member of the outpost was there, along with dozens of visiting scientists and officials. Holographic diagrams floated in the air, showing Shimmerfox brain scans and behavioral analysis charts. "The Shimmer Foxes are not pack animals," explained. "Pack animals follow a strict hierarchy. They have leaders and followers. They compete for dominance. The Shimmer Foxes are different. They are herd animals." "What's the difference?" someone asked from the crowd. "Herd animals protect each other equally. There is no leader that matters more than the lowest member. Every individual is valuable. Every individual is protected." Switched to a new diagram. "But here's what makes the Shimmer Foxes unique. Their social bonding mechanisms are incredibly flexible. They can extend their herd definition to include new species." The room was silent, absorbing the implications. Lieutenant Park fed a hungry Shimmerfox during a time of scarcity. She returned night after night, providing consistent care. The Shimmer Foxes interpreted this as herd behavior. In their understanding, Park was acting the way a herd member acts toward other herd members. She was sharing resources. She was showing loyalty. She was demonstrating that she belonged. So they adopted her, Commander said. They adopted all of us, corrected. Once Lieutenant Park was accepted as part of the herd, every human she associated with became a potential herd member. The Shimmer Foxes extended their protection to the entire outpost because the outpost was, in their view, Park's family group. Raised his hand. What about the incident? How did they coordinate like that? Smiled. This was the part of her research she was most proud of. Shimmerfox scales are not just for protection or temperature regulation. They're a communication system. Each scale can emit light in over 40 different wavelengths. When Shimmer Foxes flash their scales in patterns, they're talking to each other. It's a visual language more complex than any we've ever documented. She played a video of the Shimmer Foxes herding slowed down and analyzed. The scale patterns became visible. Waves of color passed from one animal to another, carrying instructions, warnings, encouragement. They were coordinating in real time, said, giving each other commands, adjusting their strategy as the situation changed. And they were doing it silently, invisibly, in a language that took their predator millions of years to miss completely. The implications of research spread rapidly. Within a year, Shimmerfox populations around every human settlement on 7 had exploded. The creatures didn't just tolerate human presence anymore. They actively sought it out. They nested near landing pads. They dug dens beneath storage buildings. They raised their cubs in the shadows of terraforming equipment. And wherever they went, attacks dropped dramatically. The predators learned quickly that hunting near human settlements meant facing coordinated resistance from hundreds of Shimmer Foxes. But the real surprise came when humans began expanding to new territories on the planet. Survey teams pushing into unexplored regions found Shimmer Foxes waiting for them. Somehow, the creatures had spread word of the human herd. Animals that had never seen a human being approached the surveyors without fear, their scales flashing greeting patterns that researchers were only beginning to understand. And it wasn't just Shimmer Foxes. On 7's second continent, a species of burrowing herbivores began exhibiting similar behavior. They looked nothing like Shimmer Foxes, with their rounded bodies and flat teeth. But they too started gathering near human outposts. They too started treating humans as part of their social group. They too began defending their territory against local predators. Reports came from other worlds. On Tau IV, a pod of aquatic mammals had begun following human marine research stations. They didn't have Shimmerfox scales, but they had complex song patterns that seemed to serve a similar purpose. Researchers recorded them singing what appeared to be human-related melodies, incorporating ship engine sounds and human voice patterns into their communication. On B, a species of flying creatures had started nesting on human buildings. They had never been recorded near artificial structures before, but something had changed in their behavior. Something had made them seek out human presence. The pattern was clear. Humanity's oldest instinct, the need to care for animals, was creating bonds that nobody had predicted. On world after world, alien creatures were responding to human kindness by offering their protection and their companionship in return. Park, now promoted to captain, found herself reassigned to the newly created Outreach Division. Her job was to study these relationships and help new colonies develop them safely. She traveled from world to world, teaching humans how to approach alien animals, how to recognize signs of social bonding, how to accept the responsibility of being adopted. It's not domestication, she explained to new colonists again and again. We're not training them or breeding them. We're just being consistent. We're showing up when they need us. We're sharing what we have. And they're responding by treating us as family. The Terran Expeditionary Corps began changing its protocols. Where once the rules had forbidden feeding wildlife, Now guidelines encouraged careful, respectful contact. Where once alien animals had been seen as threats or obstacles, now they were recognized as potential allies. Not every species responded to human contact. Some were too different, too alien in their psychology. Some were dangerous in ways that made approach impossible. But enough species did respond that humanity began to see itself differently. They were not just explorers anymore. They were not just conquerors or settlers or scientists. They were herd members. They were family. They were the strange two-legged creatures who showed up with food when you were hungry and stayed when you were afraid. And across the galaxy, the other spacefaring peoples watched with growing fascination. The crystalline beings sent observers, the requested cultural exchange. The ancient, who had seen 1,000 species rise and fall, emerged from their centuries of isolation to ask questions. What were humans doing? How were they doing it? And why did it seem to work where nothing else had? The answers would shake the foundations of how the galaxy understood consciousness, community, and care. But those answers were still waiting. First, humanity had to explain itself to the rest of the universe. And that task would fall to a single woman, standing before the most powerful gathering in known space. The conclave of spacefaring peoples met once every standard decade in a space station that orbited no star. It floated in the void between galaxies, a neutral ground where representatives of 47 species gathered to discuss matters affecting all known intelligent life. Ambassador stood at the central podium, looking out at the most powerful gathering in the universe. The delegation shimmered like living crystals, their bodies refracting light in patterns that conveyed emotion and meaning. They clicked their mandibles in quiet conversation, their compound eyes tracking every movement made. The ancient floated in specialized chambers filled with their native atmosphere, their tentacles swaying gently as they waited. Had been chosen for this presentation because she was calm under pressure and good at explaining complicated things simply. She would need both skills today. The conclave had called this special session to discuss humanity. Specifically, they wanted to understand the Shimmerfox phenomenon that had spread to 27 human-occupied worlds in the past decade. "Thank you for the opportunity to address this assembly," began. Her voice was translated automatically into 46 languages and communication systems. "I understand there are concerns about humanity's relationship with non-intelligent species across our territories." The delegate spoke first. Its voice came through the translator as musical and slightly confused. "We do not have concerns, Ambassador. We have questions. What you are doing should not be possible. You are forming social bonds with species that have no evolutionary reason to trust you. We wish to understand how." Nodded, she had prepared for this question. She activated the holographic display behind her, showing images from worlds across human space. Shimmer foxes on 7, burrowing herbivores on 7's second continent, aquatic mammals on Tau IV, flying creatures on. In the past 10 years, we have documented over 300 instances of alien species developing protective social bonds with human populations. The images shifted to show humans and animals interacting. A marine biologist swimming with Tau dolphins, a construction worker sharing lunch with a family of flyers, a child playing with Shimmerfox cubs outside an agricultural dome. "The pattern is always the same," continued. "Humans arrive on a new world. They encounter local wildlife. They share food, provide care, show consistent kindness. And eventually, the animals begin treating humans as members of their social group." The delegate made a buzzing sound that the translator interpreted as skepticism. "Your species is not unique in encountering alien wildlife. Many of us have colonized thousands of worlds. We have never experienced what you describe. What makes humans different?" Had been waiting for this question. She pulled up a new set of images, these ones from Earth's history. Cave paintings of humans and dogs, ancient sculptures of cats in Egyptian temples, photographs of horses, cows, chickens, countless species that humans had lived alongside for thousands of years. On our home world, we developed relationships with other species before we developed writing, before we built cities, before we created technology. The oldest partnership we have is with an animal called the wolf, which we changed so completely through our relationship that it became something entirely new, the dog. She showed images of dogs. Small dogs, big dogs, working dogs, companion dogs, dogs herding sheep, dogs guiding blind humans, dogs searching rubble for survivors, dogs sleeping on beds, running on beaches, playing with children. We did not set out to create the dog. We simply fed hungry wolves that came near our fires. We let them share our warmth. We treated them with kindness, and over generations they changed. They evolved to understand our faces, our voices, our emotions. They became part of us. The delegate extended a tentacle toward its communication device. Its translator rendered the gesture as a question. You are suggesting that your species has an instinct for forming these bonds, a biological tendency. Yes, was grateful for the directness. Humans see a hungry creature and we want to feed it. We see a scared creature and we want to comfort it. It is not logical. It is not strategic. It often puts us at risk. But it is what we do. It is, perhaps, the most human thing about us. She returned to the images from the present day. Captain Park surrounded by shimmer foxes on 3 different worlds. The animals pressed against her legs. Cubs climbed onto her shoulders. Adults brought her gifts of shed scales and interesting stones. The shimmer foxes did not adopt us because we are powerful. They adopted us because one woman on one night decided that a starving animal deserved to eat. And then she came back the next night, and the night after that. And she kept coming back until those animals understood, in whatever way animals understand anything, that humans show up. The chamber was silent. 47 species contemplated the images before them. A human woman, unremarkable by any galactic standard, surrounded by creatures that would die to protect her. That is the secret, said. That is the whole secret. We show up, and we keep showing up, and eventually the universe notices. The delegate chimed softly, a sound of deep contemplation. Your species is very young by conclave standards. You have only traveled between stars for 3 centuries, and yet you have achieved something that eludes species millions of years older than you. You have found a way to make the universe feel less cold. It was not the response had expected. She felt tears forming in her eyes and blinked them back. We do not think of it that way. We just do what feels natural. That is what makes it remarkable, they replied. To you, this is simply who you are. To us, it is a kind of miracle. The conclave session ended without formal conclusions. No policies were adopted. No treaties were signed. But something had shifted in the way the galaxy viewed humanity. They were no longer just the aggressive newcomers, the chaotic young species that built ships and claimed worlds with reckless enthusiasm. They were the ones who stopped to feed hungry animals, the ones who formed families with creatures that had no reason to trust them, the ones who showed up again and again until the universe began to trust them too. 10 years after Park first fed a starving shimmer fox, the species had spread to 14 human-occupied worlds, not through transport programs or careful introduction. The shimmer foxes had learned to stow away on human ships, denning in cargo holds and maintenance shafts. They were not pests. They were pilgrims, following their herd across the stars. The cubs born on starships grew up knowing the hum of engines as a lullaby. They raised their own cubs in the spaces between worlds, and those cubs raised cubs of their own. Generation after generation, the shimmer foxes evolved alongside humanity, becoming something new, something that had never existed before. On 7, now a thriving colony world, a statue stood at the eastern fence of the original outpost. It showed a young woman kneeling, her hand extended, offering food to a creature with 6 legs and 4 golden eyes. Below the statue, a plaque read, "Here began the friendship between humans and Shimmer foxes. Here, Lieutenant Park taught us that kindness is never wasted, that showing up matters, and that the smallest gestures can change the future of worlds." Captain Park, now retired from active service, visited the statue every year on the anniversary of that first feeding. Shimmer foxes gathered around her by the dozens, their descendants of that first starving creature she had met so long ago. They pressed against her legs. They chirped with happiness. They brought her gifts that she treasured more than any medal or commendation she had ever received. And sometimes, when the twin suns were setting and the 3 moons were rising and the violet grass was swaying in the evening breeze, would look out at her Shimmer Fox family and marvel at what she had started. She had not meant to change the galaxy. She had just wanted to help a hungry animal. But that was the point, wasn't it? The biggest changes never came from grand plans or careful strategies. They came from simple choices, small kindnesses, moments of compassion that rippled outward in ways no one could predict. Once, a woman had fed a stray animal outside a base, and the cubs had adopted an entire herd, and the herd had grown to include the stars themselves. That was the human way, and the galaxy was finally beginning to understand.